When Solana was struggling through one of its toughest chapters, a new dog showed up. Not the Shiba, not the Doge, but a scrappy little pup with a big bark. Bonk. At first glance, Bonk might have seemed like just another meme token. Another dog slapped on a coin, another community shouting, "To the moon." But Bonk wasn't just a meme, it was a statement. It was born out of frustration, out of anger at Solana's struggles, and out of a desire to remind the world that this blockchain wasn't dead. In that sense, Bonk wasn't only a meme coin, it was a rallying cry. To understand why Bonk mattered, you have to remember the moment. Solana, once hyped as Ethereum's fastest rival, was reeling. The collapse of FTX in late 2022 left it battered. Prices crashed, developers fled, critics called it a ghost chain. Confidence was gone. And then, in December 2022, Bonk was launched. A token that didn't promise to change the world, didn't offer a roadmap of technical breakthroughs, but instead offered something different. Fun, energy, a reason to believe again. And it worked. Bonk went viral almost overnight. What made it different wasn't just the dog mascot. It was the way it was distributed. Instead of being hoarded by insiders or sold in a flashy pre-sale, Bonk was airdropped to the Solana community. Developers, NFT holders, artists, they all received Bonk for free. Suddenly, thousands of people had skin in the game, not because they bought in, but because they were included. That sense of fairness and accessibility gave Bonk momentum. Social media lit up with memes. Solana users who had been quiet suddenly had a reason to gather again. Bonk wasn't about changing finance, it was about reviving a community. The little dog gave Solana its bark back. But here's what makes Bonk fascinating. It showed that meme coins aren't just financial jokes. They can carry emotional weight. Bonk arrived when Solana needed a hero, and it became exactly that. It wasn't perfect, it was volatile, it was risky, and it had no real utility at first. But it represented resilience. The message was simple. If Doge could survive, if Shiba could thrive, then maybe Solana's dog could keep the chain alive too. The story of Bonk begins not with hype, but with struggle. By the end of 2022, the Solana ecosystem was in crisis. The collapse of FTX and its founder, Sam Bankman-Fried, one of Solana's biggest backers, sent shockwaves through the chain. Sol's price collapsed, major projects stalled, and critics declared Solana dead. For many, it felt like the chain had no future. It was in this moment of despair that Bonk was born. In December 2022, a group of Solana community members launched the token, not as a polished project with VC backing, but as a grassroots gesture. Bonk was branded as the first Solana dog coin for the people, by the people. Its goal wasn't to revolutionize finance, it was to bring energy and optimism back to an ecosystem that felt abandoned. What set Bonk apart immediately was its distribution. Instead of keeping large portions for insiders or launching a flashy pre-sale, Bonk's creators airdropped 50% of the total supply directly to the Solana community. NFT collectors, developers, artists, and everyday users suddenly found Bonk in their wallets. This wasn't just a meme, it was a gift. It sent a powerful message. We're all in this together. The timing couldn't have been better. After months of negativity, Bonk's arrival felt like a spark of joy. The community rallied. NFT projects integrated Bonk. Artists made memes, traders jumped in. Social media buzzed with penguins, dogs, and jokes about Solana's comeback coin. Within weeks, Bonk became one of the most talked about tokens on the chain. Its mascot, a Shiba Inu-style dog with a cheeky grin, tied it to the broader meme coin tradition started by Dogecoin and Shiba Inu. But Bonk wasn't just copying, it was localizing. Just as Doge became a symbol of internet silliness, and Shiba became a symbol of community belonging, Bonk became a symbol of Solana's resilience. Bonk's price spiked dramatically, making headlines and attracting traders who had written Solana off. Even though the coin was wildly volatile, it didn't matter. People cared less about charts and more about the feeling. Bonk wasn't promising utility, it was promising hope. And for a battered ecosystem, that was enough. Over time, Bonk began appearing in Solana-based apps, wallets, and games. While its use cases were still limited, the fact that it was being adopted at all proved its cultural pull. Projects saw Bonk as more than a meme. They saw it as a way to engage users, attract attention, and build community energy. The story of Bonk's origins is less about economics and more about timing. It wasn't born in a bull market when everything was pumping. It was born in the ashes of a crash, when the community needed a rallying point. That's why it mattered. In a way, Bonk is the underdog story of meme coins, not created by billionaires or hyped influencers, but by a group of Solana believers who wanted to bring their chain back to life. And for a while, against all odds, the little dog barked loud enough to be heard across the crypto world. Bonk might be a meme coin, but even meme coins need structure. Underneath the jokes and dog memes, Bonk has a technical foundation that explains how it works and why it spread so quickly. At its core, Bonk is a Solana program library token, Solana's version of Ethereum's ERC20. That means Bonk isn't its own blockchain. Instead, it runs on Solana's high-speed, low-cost network, tapping into the same infrastructure that powers DeFi apps, NFTs, and other tokens. This choice was deliberate. Solana's transaction fees are measured in fractions of a cent, making it the perfect playground for meme coins that thrive on high trading volume and fast movement. One of Bonk's biggest design features was its tokenomics. The total supply was set at 100 trillion Bonk tokens, a massive number meant to create the psychological effect of abundance. Holders could say they owned millions or billions of tokens, even if they only spent a few dollars. This cheap but plenty model mirrors Dogecoin and Shiba Inu, tapping into the psychology that being a meme billionaire feels empowering and fun. The distribution of that supply was critical to Bonk's identity. 50% of all Bonk was airdropped to the Solana community at launch. NFT projects, developers, artists, and everyday users received free Bonk. This wasn't just marketing, it was a cultural statement. In an industry often criticized for insider allocations and VC dominance, Bonk presented itself as the people's token. By seeding ownership widely, it gave everyone a reason to care. Another chunk of supply went to liquidity pools, ensuring that Bonk could be traded immediately on decentralized exchanges like Orca and Radium. That liquidity was key. Airdrops alone don't build momentum unless people can trade and speculate. By making sure there was room for volume, Bonk's creators gave the token life beyond the drop. Bonk also benefited from Solana's speed. With block times under a second and near zero fees, Bonk trading felt fun, almost like a game. People could buy, sell, and meme without worrying about gas wars or high costs. This gave Bonk an edge over Ethereum-based meme coins, which often suffer from transaction bottlenecks during hype cycles. Beyond pure trading, Bonk began to integrate into the Solana ecosystem. Some NFT projects accepted it for payments. Game developers experimented with using Bonk as in-game currency. Even DeFi projects started adding Bonk pairs, treating it as part of Solana's cultural fabric. These integrations didn't make Bonk useful in the traditional sense, but they helped it stick around as more than just a flash-in-the-pan token. Technologically, Bonk isn't groundbreaking. It doesn't promise to solve scalability or redefine DeFi, but that simplicity is part of its design. It doesn't need to be complex because its value comes from culture, not code. The tech simply provides a stage where memes can perform at scale. Think of it this way. Ethereum gave us smart contracts, Solana gave us speed, and Bonk gave us a reason to laugh again. The code is standard, but the way it was distributed, the timing of its launch, and the energy it created show how even simple design choices can fuel a movement. If technology is the backbone, then community is the heartbeat. And for Bonk, the community is everything. It's what turned the coin from just another dog token into a cultural rallying point for the Solana ecosystem. From day one, Bonk leaned into fairness and inclusion. The airdrop wasn't just a distribution strategy, it was a cultural spark. Overnight, thousands of Solana users became Bonk holders without spending a cent. Artists, NFT collectors, developers, and everyday traders logged into their wallets to find Bonk waiting for them. That single gesture created an immediate bond. Bonk wasn't for insiders or whales. It was for everyone. Social media quickly amplified that bond. On Twitter, X, Telegram, and Discord, memes flooded the feeds. The mascot, a cheeky Shiba-like dog, became the face of Solana's revival. Holders branded themselves as part of the Bonk fam, sharing memes, celebrating pumps, and joking through dumps. For many, Bonk wasn't just a coin. It was a reminder that Solana still had life, creativity, and humor left in it. What made the culture unique was the timing. Solana was at its lowest point when Bonk launched. Developers were leaving, investors had lost faith, and morale was at rock bottom. Bonk flipped that script. It gave people a reason to rally again. NFT projects that had been quiet suddenly had something fun to integrate. Communities that felt scattered suddenly had a shared symbol. Bonk wasn't just a meme. It was therapy for a struggling ecosystem. Bonk also tapped into the broader meme coin tradition. Just as Dogecoin built a culture of silliness and Shiba Inu built a culture of belonging, Bonk built a culture of resilience. It wasn't about pretending Solana had no problems, it was about laughing through them. The community embraced the underdog identity, branding themselves as fighters who wouldn't give up on their chain. Creative energy flowed naturally. Memes turned into GIFs, fan art, Bonk-themed NFTs, and even merchandise. The community used humor as fuel, pushing the token into conversations far beyond Solana. For outsiders, Bonk looked like just another meme coin. For insiders, it felt like proof that culture itself could keep a chain alive. Of course, the culture has its risks. Like all meme coin communities, Bonk thrives on hype. That hype can turn toxic when people FOMO in at the top and lose money. Critics argue that the community celebrates wins loudly but downplays losses, creating unrealistic expectations. Others point out that while the memes are fun, speculation remains the real driver. But despite those flaws, Bonk's culture is what makes it stick. It's what separates it from the dozens of forgotten meme coins that launch and die each week. Bonk didn't just appear in wallets. It appeared in conversations, in art, in identity, and that cultural presence has outlasted many who called it a temporary joke. In the end, Bonk's community is more than traders. It's believers. Believers in Solana, in memes, in the idea that even when markets are dark, a little humor can bring people back together. That's why Bonk isn't just a token. It's a movement of laughter, resilience, and shared hope, carried forward by a dog with a bark louder than anyone expected. For all the hype, energy, and community spirit around Bonk, it faces the same challenges that every meme coin eventually runs into. Questions of sustainability, legitimacy, and risk. The first challenge is volatility. Bonk's price history is a roller coaster. Its initial launch saw massive pumps as people rushed to trade their airdropped tokens, followed by sharp corrections. Like Dogecoin and Shiba Inu before it, Bonk's value swings wildly based on social media buzz, market sentiment, and community energy. For early adopters, this volatility can bring life-changing gains. But for latecomers, it often brings painful losses. This makes Bonk less of an investment and more of a gamble, something even many of its supporters admit openly. Then there's the issue of utility, or lack of it. Bonk was never launched with a grand roadmap or promises of solving blockchain problems. It was designed as a meme coin, plain and simple. Critics argue that this makes it inherently unsustainable. Without real use cases, they say, Bonk will eventually fade once the novelty wears off. Supporters counter that culture is utility, that memes and community are value in themselves. But whether that belief can survive multiple market cycles is an open question. Another concern is over-reliance on hype. Meme coins thrive on constant attention. If the memes stop flowing, if social media moves on, Bonk could quickly lose momentum. The challenge is whether the community can keep creating enough energy to keep the coin relevant, especially as new meme coins pop up every week on Solana and beyond. The copycat problem also looms large. Meme coins are easy to replicate, and Bonk's success has inspired dozens of imitators. Each new launch competes for the same pool of attention, liquidity, and memes. While Bonk has brand recognition on Solana, it isn't immune to being overshadowed by the next viral animal or internet joke. There are also regulatory risks. Meme coins already attract skepticism from regulators who see them as speculation tools rather than real financial instruments. If crackdowns on crypto intensify, tokens like Bonk could be easy targets. This could impact not just trading, but also how seriously developers and projects integrate Bonk into their ecosystems. Finally, there's the perception problem. Traditional investors and analysts dismiss Bonk as a distraction, a sideshow in an industry that should be focused on building real-world utility. To them, Bonk's rise is proof of everything wrong with crypto. Too much hype, too little substance. That perception makes it harder for Bonk to gain broader legitimacy, even if its community sees it as meaningful. And yet, despite all these criticisms, Bonk has persisted longer than many expected. It has survived dips, competition, and skepticism because its community refuses to let it die. That resilience doesn't erase the risks, but it does highlight a truth. Bonk isn't pretending to be something it's not. It knows it's a meme coin, and it wears that identity proudly. The question is whether pride, humor, and community are enough to sustain it in the long term, or whether Bonk will eventually be remembered as a moment, not a movement. Bonk began as a joke, but it quickly became something more. It wasn't a white paper, a roadmap, or a groundbreaking piece of technology that gave it life. It was timing, culture, and community. Launched in one of Solana's darkest hours, Bonk reminded people that sometimes what you need isn't another technical fix. It's a reason to believe again. That's what makes Bonk unique. It didn't pretend to be the future of finance. It didn't try to compete with Ethereum's smart contracts or Bitcoin's store of value narrative. Instead, it leaned fully into being what it was, a meme coin, a token designed to make people laugh, trade, and share in something fun. And strangely, that honesty worked. Bonk's story shows us that crypto isn't just about code. It's about emotion. When Solana was drowning in negativity, Bonk gave people joy. When traders felt disillusioned, Bonk gave them energy. When critics called Solana dead, Bonk barked back. It proved that memes aren't distractions from crypto, they're part of its DNA. Of course, the risks are real. Bonk is volatile, speculative, and fragile. Many people who buy it will lose money. Critics dismiss it as hype, and they're not wrong to warn about the dangers of chasing pumps. Bonk doesn't have a clear utility beyond culture, and it may never survive long-term once the spotlight moves elsewhere. But even if Bonk fades, its impact is undeniable. It gave Solana a cultural heartbeat when the chain needed it most. It proved that distribution matters, that airdrops can create fairness and belonging, and that memes are powerful enough to rally entire ecosystems. Bonk reminded us that finance isn't just about charts, it's about people. And people need stories, symbols, and reasons to gather. The real question is what Bonk tells us about the future of crypto. Maybe it suggests that meme coins will always have a place, not as technological innovations, but as cultural markers. Maybe it shows us that humor and community can be just as valuable as liquidity and code. Or maybe it's simply another reminder that in the digital age, value is as much about belief as it is about fundamentals. Because when you think about it, all money is belief. Gold is shiny, but it's belief that makes it valuable. Dollars are just paper until people trust them. Bitcoin was worthless until people decided it mattered. And Bonk, like Doge, Shiba, and Pepe before it, proves that even memes can carry belief. Even jokes can become movements. So what's next for Bonk? Maybe it will continue to grow, integrating into more Solana projects and cementing itself as the chain's cultural mascot. Maybe it will fade, remembered as the spark that gave Solana a laugh when it needed it. Or maybe, just maybe, it will join the legends, standing alongside Doge and Shiba as proof that the internet can turn anything into money. Whatever happens, Bonk's story is already written in crypto history. It's the story of a little dog that barked when everyone else was silent. The story of how humor revived a struggling ecosystem. The story of how memes once again proved their power.